You turn the key. Nothing. You try again. Still nothing. The dashboard stays dark, the engine silent, and in that moment, you realize the world you knew just ended. This isn't a dead battery. This isn't a mechanical failure. This is an electromagnetic pulse. And the vehicle you've been driving every single day, the one you depend on to evacuate, to reach your family, to survive, is now a 4,000-pound paperweight sitting in your driveway. If you think this scenario is far-fetched, you're dangerously unprepared. EMPs are real. The threat is documented, and your modern vehicle is one of the most vulnerable pieces of technology you own. Right now, before it's too late, you need to understand what an EMP will do to your car, which vehicles can survive, and how to protect or replace what you drive today. If you're serious about surviving what's coming, subscribe now, because this information could be the difference between escape and being stranded when chaos erupts. An electromagnetic pulse isn't science fiction. It's a burst of electromagnetic radiation that can be triggered by a high-altitude nuclear detonation, a solar storm, or even a specialized non-nuclear weapon designed specifically to fry electronics. When an EMP strikes, it sends a massive surge of energy through anything with electrical circuits, and modern vehicles are packed with them. Your car's engine control unit, the transmission computer, the fuel injection system, the ignition module, the anti-lock brakes, the airbag sensors, even the damn door locks. All of these rely on delicate microchips and semiconductors that cannot withstand the voltage spike an EMP generates. The Congressional EMP Commission has stated clearly that most vehicles on the road today would either stop immediately or fail to restart after an EMP event. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is documented risk assessment from experts who've spent decades studying the vulnerability of our infrastructure. Here's what actually happens when an EMP hits your vehicle. The pulse induces a current in any conductive material, wires, circuits, metal components, and that current overloads and destroys sensitive electronics. Your engine control unit, the brain of your car, gets fried instantly. Without it, your engine can't regulate fuel mixture, ignition timing, or emissions controls. Even if your engine mechanically could run, it won't, because the computer that tells it how to run is dead. Your fuel pump, which is electronically controlled in almost every vehicle built after the mid-1980s, stops working. Your ignition system, which relies on electronic modules to fire the spark plugs, fails. Your transmission, if it's automatic, loses its electronic control and either locks up or can't shift gears. Anti-lock brakes, traction control, stability systems, all gone. Power steering in many newer cars is electrically assisted, so that fails too. You're not just dealing with a car that won't start, you're dealing with a vehicle that's been lobotomized, and even if you could somehow get it running, it wouldn't be safe or controllable. The worst part is that most people have no idea how vulnerable their specific vehicle is. If you drive anything made after 1980, you're at significant risk. If you drive anything made after 2000, you're almost certainly screwed. The more modern your car, the more computers it has. A car from 2010 might have 30 or 40 electronic control units managing everything from the engine to the seats. A car from 2020 could have over 100. Electric vehicles and hybrids are even worse because their entire propulsion system depends on complex battery management systems and power inverters that are extraordinarily sensitive to electrical surges. Tesla, Rivian, any EV on the market. These are rolling targets for EMP failure. Even if the battery cells themselves survive, the systems that control charging, discharging, and motor function will not. The irony is cruel. The vehicles marketed as the future of transportation are the most fragile when facing an electromagnetic threat. The science behind EMP damage is straightforward but devastating. When a nuclear weapon detonates at high altitude, typically between 30 and 300 miles above the Earth's surface, it creates three distinct pulse components. The E1 pulse happens in nanoseconds and is the most destructive to electronics. It's a fast, high-voltage spike that overwhelms circuits before any protective device can react. The E2 pulse is similar to lightning and lasts microseconds, but it's less damaging because most systems have some lightning protection. The E3 pulse is slower, lasting seconds to minutes, and it acts like a geomagnetic storm, inducing currents in long conductors like power lines and pipelines. For your vehicle, the E1 pulse is the killer. It doesn't need to be a direct hit. A high-altitude detonation over the central United States could affect the entire continental country. One weapon, one pulse, and every modern vehicle from coast to coast could be disabled simultaneously. Solar storms present a different but related threat. The Carrington event of 1859 was a massive solar coronal mass ejection that hit Earth and induced currents strong enough to set telegraph equipment on fire. If a similar event happened today, the E3-like effects could damage power transformers and create widespread grid failure. But the impact on vehicles would be less severe than a nuclear EMP, because solar storms don't produce the fast E1 pulse. However, they could still damage charging systems, alternators, and voltage regulators in vehicles, especially if those vehicles are running or connected to external power when the storm hits. The point is that electromagnetic threats come from multiple sources, and your vehicle is vulnerable to all of them in different ways. So which vehicles can survive an EMP? This is where you need to separate myth from reality. There's a popular belief that any old car without computers will be fine, and while that's partially true, it's not that simple. Vehicles built before the widespread adoption of electronic ignition and fuel injection, roughly before 1975, have a much better chance of surviving because they use mechanical systems. A 1960s or early 1970s vehicle with a carburetor, mechanical distributor, and points-based ignition has no microchips to fry. The alternator might fail, the voltage regulator could go, but the engine itself can run. A 1950s farm truck with a manual transmission and basic electrical system could potentially keep running or be repaired with simple parts. But here's the critical issue. These vehicles are rare, expensive, and most people don't have one sitting in their garage. And even if you do, you need to know how to maintain and repair it, because parts won't be easy to find after a collapse. There's also been testing, limited but revealing, on how different vehicles respond to electromagnetic pulses. In 2004, the EMP Commission conducted tests on a sample of vehicles from different eras using simulated EMP fields. The results were mixed but alarming. Some older vehicles experienced temporary disruptions but restarted. Some newer vehicles shut down and wouldn't restart without repairs. A few vehicles seemed unaffected, but the variability was high and the testing wasn't comprehensive enough to declare any specific make or model completely safe. What we do know is this: the simpler the vehicle, the better the odds. Diesel engines with mechanical fuel injection, older trucks with minimal electronics, military vehicles designed with EMP hardening, these have the best survival chances. But the average sedan, SUV, or pickup truck you bought in the last 20 years? It's a gamble, and the odds aren't in your favor. The military has known about EMP vulnerability for decades and has taken steps to harden critical vehicles and equipment. Vehicles designed for military use often have shielded wiring, protected electronic modules, and redundant systems that can withstand electromagnetic interference. The Humvee, for example, was designed with some level of EMP protection, though it's not immune. Older military trucks like the M35 Deuce-and-a-Half or the M998 have simpler systems and better survival odds, but civilian vehicles have no such protection. Manufacturers prioritize fuel efficiency, emissions compliance, safety features, and comfort, all of which require extensive electronics. EMP resistance doesn't sell cars, so it's not a design priority. This means that the vehicle you bought for reliability and safety is actually a liability in an EMP scenario. Let's talk about what you can do right now to prepare. First, assess what you're driving. Look up your vehicle's year, make, and model, and research how much electronic control it has. If it has an OBD2 port, which became mandatory in 1996, it has significant electronic systems that are vulnerable. If it has modern features like adaptive cruise control, lane keeping assist, automatic emergency braking, or a touchscreen infotainment system, it's heavily computerized and highly vulnerable. Once you understand your risk, you have 3 realistic options. Protect your current vehicle, acquire a backup vehicle with better EMP resistance, or plan for alternative transportation. Protecting your current vehicle is difficult, but not impossible. The most effective method is a Faraday cage, which is an enclosure made of conductive material that blocks electromagnetic fields. To protect a vehicle, you'd need to store it inside a metal building or shipping container that's properly grounded and sealed, with no gaps or openings that allow electromagnetic radiation to penetrate. This is expensive, impractical for daily use vehicles, and requires technical knowledge to do correctly. Some people attempt to use EMP shields or protective bags designed for electronics, but these are sized for small devices like radios or laptops, not entire cars. There are companies that claim to offer EMP hardening kits for vehicles, which typically involve shielding critical components like the ECU and installing surge protectors on the electrical system. These kits are unproven in real-world EMP conditions, expensive, and may void your vehicle's warranty. The reality is that fully protecting a modern vehicle from EMP is nearly impossible for the average person. The second option, acquiring a backup vehicle, is more practical. Look for a vehicle built before 1980, ideally before 1975, with as few electronic components as possible. Diesel trucks from the 1970s and early 1980s, especially models with mechanical fuel injection like the Dodge Ram with a Cummins 12-valve diesel or older Ford and Chevy trucks with naturally aspirated diesels, are excellent choices. These engines don't rely on spark plugs or electronic ignition systems, and many have mechanical fuel pumps. Manual transmissions are essential because automatic transmissions from that era often had some electronic components, and newer ones are entirely computer-controlled. Older Jeeps, particularly the CJ series from the 1970s and early 1980s, are another option due to their simplicity and availability of parts. The CJ5 and CJ7 models with inline-six engines are known for reliability and mechanical simplicity. Military surplus vehicles like the Humvee or older deuce-and-a-half trucks are built with some level of EMP resistance, but they're expensive, require special licensing in some areas, and are not practical for everyday use. The goal is to have a vehicle that can be repaired with basic tools and doesn't need a computer to run. When you're shopping for a backup vehicle, inspect it thoroughly. Check for rust, especially in the frame and undercarriage. Test the engine, transmission, brakes, and steering. Make sure all mechanical systems are in good working order because after an EMP, professional mechanics and parts suppliers won't exist. You need a vehicle that's reliable now and can be maintained with minimal resources later. Look for vehicles with a strong aftermarket parts availability. Ford, Chevy, and Dodge trucks from the 1970s have extensive parts networks because they were popular and are still used in rural areas. Jeep CJs have dedicated enthusiast communities that keep parts in circulation. Avoid rare or exotic vehicles that require specialized parts or knowledge to repair. Once you have a backup vehicle, you need to store spare parts. Even EMP-resistant vehicles can fail due to damaged alternators, voltage regulators, or ignition coils, which are still electronic even in older systems. Keep spares of these components in a Faraday container. A simple Faraday cage can be made from a metal trash can with a tight-fitting lid, lined with cardboard or foam to prevent the contents from touching the metal. Store your spare ECU if you're trying to protect a newer vehicle, spare alternator, voltage regulator, ignition module, distributor cap, rotor, spark plugs, wiring harnesses, and any other critical electronic or electrical parts inside, and make sure the container is grounded. This won't save your vehicle if it's running during the pulse, but it gives you the ability to repair it afterward. Also, keep basic tools, a multimeter for electrical diagnostics, spare fuses, relays, and any vehicle-specific repair manuals. Knowledge is as important as parts. The third option is alternative transportation. Bicycles, motorcycles, and even horses become viable when motorized vehicles fail. Motorcycles built before the 1980s, especially dirt bikes and dual sport models, have simpler electronics and are easier to shield or repair. A bike with a kickstart and minimal electrical components can run without a battery if necessary. Models like the Honda XR series, Yamaha XT series, or Kawasaki KLR from the 1980s and 1990s are durable, simple, and have good parts availability. Motorcycles use less fuel than cars, can navigate through traffic and rough terrain, and are easier to conceal and defend. Bicycles require no fuel, no electronics, and are reliable for short to medium distances. A quality mountain bike or touring bike with spare tires, tubes, chains, and basic tools can get you hundreds of miles if you're in decent physical shape. If you live in a rural area and have the space and knowledge, horses are the ultimate EMP-proof transportation. Though they require feed, water, medical care, and training that most people aren't prepared to provide. The point is to diversify your transportation options so you're not entirely dependent on one vehicle. Now let's address fuel, because even if you have a working vehicle, it's useless without gas or diesel. After an EMP, gas stations won't function. The pumps are electronic, the payment systems are down, and supply chains will collapse within days. Refineries and pipelines depend on electricity and computer control, so fuel production and distribution will cease immediately. The fuel that exists in storage tanks will be the last fuel available, and it will run out fast. You need fuel storage at home. For gasoline, use proper gas cans rated for fuel storage, not plastic milk jugs or improvised containers that degrade and leak. Store fuel in 5-gallon or smaller containers for easier handling and rotation. Add a fuel stabilizer like PRIG or Stabil to extend shelf life to 1 or 2 years. Store the fuel in a cool, dry, ventilated area away from living spaces, ignition sources, and direct sunlight. A detached garage, shed, or outdoor storage area is ideal. Check local regulations on fuel storage limits, though in a collapse scenario, compliance becomes irrelevant. Diesel fuel stores better than gasoline and can last years with proper additives. Diesel doesn't evaporate like gasoline and it's less volatile, making it safer to store. Biocides prevent microbial growth in diesel fuel, which can clog filters and damage injectors. If you have a diesel vehicle, this is a significant advantage. Diesel engines are also more durable and efficient than gasoline engines, and older diesels with mechanical injection are among the most EMP-resistant vehicles you can own. Keep at least enough fuel to get you and your family to your bug-out location or to travel several hundred miles if evacuation is necessary. Calculate your vehicle's fuel consumption, plan your route distance, and add a safety margin for detours and delays. Rotation is critical. Use and replace your stored fuel regularly to keep it fresh. Label containers with the date of storage and the type of stabilizer used. You also need to think about what happens on the road after an EMP. Traffic will be chaos. Thousands of vehicles will stop instantly on highways, creating massive gridlock. Drivers will panic, abandon their cars, or try to push them off the road. Accidents will happen as some vehicles lose power while moving, causing pileups and blocked lanes. If you're in a working vehicle, you'll face blocked roads, desperate people trying to carjack you, and a complete absence of law enforcement or traffic control. Your route planning becomes critical. Avoid highways and major roads. Interstate systems will be parking lots filled with stranded cars and dangerous people. Use back roads, rural routes, county roads, and paths that bypass urban areas. Study maps of your region and identify multiple routes to your destination. Mark bridges, choke points, and areas where roads could be easily blocked. Have paper maps because GPS won't work and your phone will be dead. Atlas-style road maps, topographic maps, and local county maps are essential. Practice navigating with a compass and map before you need to. Travel at night if possible to avoid detection and confrontation. Most people will be moving during the day, scavenging, panicking, or trying to find help. Nighttime travel reduces your visibility and makes it harder for others to target you. Use low-beam headlights or drive with lights off if you have night vision equipment or know the roads well. Keep your vehicle as inconspicuous as possible. No flashy colors, no visible supplies, nothing that makes you a target. Remove or cover decals, bumper stickers, and anything that identifies you or your affiliations. Dark, neutral colors like gray, tan, or dark green blend better than white or bright colors. If you have a truck, keep the bed covered and supplies hidden. Don't display weapons openly, but have them accessible if needed. Security is another major concern. A working vehicle after an EMP makes you a high-value target. People will kill for a running car when their own won't start. Desperation erases morality. You need to be able to defend your vehicle and yourself. Keep a firearm accessible and know how to use it. Understand the laws in your state, but also understand that in a collapse scenario, law enforcement won't exist and survival will override legality. Avoid stopping for anyone. Don't pick up hitchhikers, even if they seem harmless. Ambushes and carjackings will be common. If someone tries to block the road with their body, debris, or a disabled vehicle, be prepared to drive around them or through them if necessary. This sounds brutal, But in a true shtf situation, hesitation will get you killed. Your priority is getting your family to safety, not helping strangers. That doesn't mean you become a monster, but it does mean you make hard decisions based on threat assessment and survival, not compassion or guilt. Carry self-defense tools beyond firearms. Pepper spray, a knife, a baton, or a tire iron can be used if someone tries to approach your vehicle or force entry. Keep doors locked at all times. Windows should be up or only cracked slightly for ventilation. If someone approaches, don't roll down the window to talk. Communication can happen through glass. If they become aggressive or threatening, drive away immediately. If you're forced to stop, stay in the vehicle unless it's on fire or otherwise unsafe. The vehicle provides protection, mobility, and a psychological barrier that's harder to breach than you standing on the road. Another consideration is vehicle maintenance during the crisis. You won't have access to mechanics, parts stores, or roadside assistance. You need to know how to perform basic repairs and diagnostics yourself. Learn how to change a tire, replace a belt, fix a fuel line, diagnose electrical problems, and perform emergency field repairs. Carry a comprehensive toolkit: socket set, wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers, wire cutters, electrical tape, zip ties, JB weld, hose clamps, spare fluids including oil, coolant, brake fluid, and transmission fluid, a tire repair kit, a portable air compressor or hand pump, and jumper cables. Even though they may not help in an EMP scenario, they're useful for other failures. Keep a vehicle repair manual specific to your make and model. Haynes and Chilton manuals are affordable and detailed. If you're not mechanically inclined, learn now. Take a basic auto repair class, watch YouTube videos while the internet still exists, and practice on your own vehicle so you're not learning during an emergency. Let's also discuss what not to rely on. Don't assume that your vehicle's EMP protection is something you can test. Testing with real EMP pulses is impossible for civilians, and even simulated tests are expensive and unreliable. The equipment to generate a realistic E1 pulse doesn't exist outside of military and research facilities. Companies that sell EMP protection devices often use misleading marketing and unverifiable claims. Don't trust products that claim to make your modern car EMP-proof without independent verification and real-world testing data. Don't assume that because your car is parked and turned off, it's safe. An EMP can still induce currents in the wiring and damage components even when the vehicle isn't running. The pulse doesn't care if the ignition is on or off. It affects all conductive materials within its range. Don't believe that EMP is the only threat to your vehicle. In a long-term collapse, roads will deteriorate, fuel will become scarce, and mechanical failures will happen without replacement parts or repair services. Potholes, debris, lack of maintenance, and harsh conditions will break down even the toughest vehicles. Your vehicle is a tool with a limited lifespan, not a guarantee of long-term mobility. Plan for the eventual failure of your vehicle and have contingencies in place. That might mean caching supplies along your route, having a secondary bug-out location closer to home, or building skills in animal husbandry and wagon repair if you're thinking truly long-term. Finally, understand the bigger picture. An EMP that takes out vehicles will also destroy the power grid, communication systems, water treatment, hospitals, financial systems, and every other piece of infrastructure you depend on. Your vehicle is just one part of your survival strategy. You need water, food, shelter, medical supplies, and a plan for long-term sustainability. Your car might get you to your bug-out location, but then what? You need skills, community, and resources to survive beyond the initial days after the pulse. Don't fixate on the vehicle alone. It's a means to an end, not the solution itself. Preparedness is holistic. Your transportation plan integrates with your shelter plan, your food plan, your security plan, and your community plan. Think about who you're traveling with. If you're evacuating with family, especially children or elderly members, your vehicle needs to accommodate their needs. Car seats for young children, medical equipment for those with health issues, comfort items to reduce stress and panic. If you're part of a preparedness group, coordinate vehicle plans. Convoy travel offers security and mutual support, but also makes you more visible and slower. Decide in advance who leads, how you'll communicate without radios or phones, and what to do if the convoy is separated or attacked. Establish rally points and contingency plans. Consider the psychological impact of vehicle failure on unprepared people. Most Americans are completely dependent on their cars. When those cars stop working, panic will be immediate and widespread. People will flood out of cities on foot, creating refugee streams that clog roads and spread chaos. Violence will erupt as people fight over working vehicles, fuel, and supplies. Understanding this human behavior helps you predict where danger will be concentrated and how to avoid it. Stay away from population centers. The further you are from cities and suburbs, the safer you'll be in the initial hours and days after an EMP. And if you want to go deeper, you'll find in the pinned comment some guides and documents that can take your preparedness to the next level. Check them out when you're ready. The vehicle you drive today won't start tomorrow after an EMP unless you take action now. Assess your risk, acquire a backup, store fuel and parts, plan your routes, and understand that when the pulse hits, you'll be competing against millions of unprepared people for the few resources that remain. This isn't fear-mongering. This is reality. The EMP Commission, FEMA, and military analysts have all warned about this threat, and yet most people do nothing. Don't be one of them. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment with your own vehicle prep strategies, and subscribe because the information we're bringing you could save your life when the grid goes dark and the world you knew disappears. The clock is ticking. The threat is real. And your car, the one sitting in your driveway right now, is more vulnerable than you think.